Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
All right, everyone, welcome to today's show. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in today. Today, we have such an amazing guest. I mean, I had the opportunity to meet Athena via phone last week. We talked for a solid hour, and this is the first time, folks, I've ever talked to somebody after an hour and said to this person, I love you. And I got off the phone and I thought, why the hell did I say this to a person I've never met in person and only spent 60 minutes ever talking to? And it was because, and I think you'll pick up on this, of why I said that today. Just an amazing human being. So today, folks, we have Athena Johnson on today. And Athena comes from Minnesota originally, was raised there in Minnesota. And I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical issue here, folks. There we go. She got her bachelor's degree in 1992 in Russian at Williams College. She wanted to fight the Cold War. So she worked in the former Soviet Union, principally in Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan for the State Department after the collapse of the Soviet Union. She came back and got her MBA in 1998 from Cornell University. So she's a pretty smart, she's wicked smart, as they say. She worked for SC Johnson in Ukraine and Russia, setting up sales and distribution systems. And now she is celebrating a 25-year career with one of my favorite companies, Ameriprise Financial, the last 10 years as the Senior Director of Operations for a key business line. She's a lifelong learner with a special passion for cosmology and quantum physics and the intersection with consciousness. So do you think, folks, that we're not going to get her back for a second episode to talk about just that subject? We are. She's a martial artist. She's a mother of two amazingly beautiful daughters, ages 21 and 18. And over her career and her life, she's come full circle. Now she's back in the state of Minnesota, living in Cathedral Hill neighborhood out of St. Paul. So I am so excited to have her on here. So my new friend, who for the first time ever after 60 minutes, I said I love you to someone, Athena Johnson. Welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
What an honor, and thank you for that introduction. I felt very much the same way with you. It's the heart-to-heart connection that I felt we had in our hour time together.
Well, I got to tell you, I was very happy when you said I love you too back, because a lot of people could take that the wrong way.
Well, we are all humans here on this planet, and I think our role and our job is supposed to be to lift each other up and walk each other home.
Increase the sense of self-worth of others. That's the
Absolutely
job.
Right. Yep.
So, by the way, Bamboo Pack, I'll let you know Athena and I are both fighting off colds, so you might hear a lot of sniffling and clearing our throats, and maybe we talk a little bit nasally today, but we're powering through. So, all right. So, Athena, I felt I got to know you pretty well in our conversation, and we got to spend several minutes before we started recording today. So, but can you please share with me more, and also share with the Bamboo Pack a little bit about yourself, your childhood, where you're from, what or who inspired you growing up?
Yeah, sure. So, was born in Iowa. My father was a graduate student at University of Iowa, but that was short-lived, and then moved to Minnesota when I was like 2 or 3 years old. So grew up in those that might know it, Hopkins. It's a little suburb of the Twin Cities off the west side, and grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household, which I will, I think, get to in a little bit, as it sort of formed a lot of who I am and the work that I've done to be who I am now was a result of pretty significant childhood trauma. I will go to the person that inspired me most in my childhood, is my grandfather, who was just a magnificent human being. Grew up went to the Minnesota School of Mining during the Great Depression. Graduated from there. Obviously didn't get a job in 1931, so went out west to pan for gold, and I've got a very big picture of him panning for gold on my bedroom wall as an honor to him. And one of the things that I so admired about him was, he grew up in a time when manhood was defined, very specifically. And there was, and one of the definitions certainly is we're supposed to be impervious to emotion. We're not supposed to feel things. And what I found with him was he saw me more than anyone else saw me. I felt that, he looked into my eyes and he could see my soul, and I looked in his eyes and I could see his soul. Whereas everyone else around me in my family system was so, I don't want to say it, involved in their own dysfunction that I was simply just sort of an afterthought or sometimes a nuisance. But with him, it was just the presence of grace, and I knew he felt the same with me. So, as I think about the era that he grew up in, but his ability to be kind and compassionate and loving and have that be a definition of manhood for him. I think it's what manhood should be defined as, and really admired his feeling the sunshine of that within me, but also seeing that as an example of what is possible.
No, when did he pass away?
Sadly, when I needed him most. He passed away when I was 13 years old. He had cancer that just really ate him up. And the last time I saw him, he weighed 70 pounds.
Oh. What was his first name?
His name was Marvin Johnson. Yeah, well, it's interesting, Brian. So, as I think about sort of my own work with my own personal psychology and dealing with the layers of trauma that I have, from age, call it 0 to 18. It's like geological layers, right? So as I did my own therapy work, it was sort of going through layer by layer and seeing the trauma, naming the trauma, sort of reintegrating the splits within myself that resulted from the trauma. And it was a deepening exercise, right? It was looking for the gold. It was looking for the ore, right, within. And I feel like, say, he went into mining, and this is the reason I have the panning for gold picture in my bedroom, is I feel like that was a psychological act that was available to him as a man in that generation. Was I'm looking for the gold amongst the dross, right? The base ore, because there was no psychological support for an inward exploration of that. He externalized it. So he became a general superintendent for a Minnesota, so U.S. Steel Minnesota Mintech plant, for those who might know it, Virginia, Minnesota. So he spent his entire life looking for ore amongst the earth. And I feel that if he were born in my generation, that he would have turned that exploration internally as opposed to externally. So anyway, I'm very, very indebted to him, and I feel my survival and who I am as a large measure to him.
Let's dedicate this show to Marvin, Grandpa, your grandpa. That's awesome. What a great man. And what a great man, like you said, at that time frame. Go through the depression. I mean, yeah, manhood was predicated on certain premises back then that are not all true. Maybe some of them are. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking about that yesterday, I left my daughter's house at, I don't know, noon or so. I was up there for 2 days. My mother is visiting, and my little 2-year-old grandson, Jack, is home from school, from daycare, because grandma's there, his great grandma. And I pulled out of the driveway, and I wasn't sure if I was going to leave yesterday or early this morning and just be on the road, at dark or before it gets light out, because I have a full day today. And I left at noon anyway, and I pulled out, driving down their long driveway, and I looked back, and here's my mom waving out the picture window, and all I could see is about 2/3 of my grandson's top of his head waving back at me. And I just started bawling. I'm like, and I'm going to see him again tomorrow. I said, but it's I don't know, man. I don't know if it's if it's when you get older, you are more emotional, or if men are just becoming to the realization that we can cry, we have emotion. And some of my best friends who are very, very, you would say are stereotypically macho men, played football or rugby in college, and like to hunt and fish, but the best ones I have during a conversation will start crying on occasion, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, my goodness, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's extraordinarily healthy. I feel saddened for, much of the cultural messaging is not supportive of that. But I have to say, there is nothing more, I don't say charming, sexy than somebody that's willing to be completely vulnerable with you and to show you their sacred soul, right? And if they allow you to see that, then that's true grace. And I feel like that's what all of us should be doing. I just feel like society culturally allows women to do that more than has been the cultural expectation for men. So I do think that is all changing. I think my grandfather was a pioneer on that.
Oh,
so,
sure.
And I see that changing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think love, compassion, and grace are the things that we should all be striving for, and dropping some of the persona and the invulnerability is probably necessary for all of us.
Like we talked about before we started recording today, I mean, I think vulnerability is the greatest strength that men or women can carry. It is, because you can't lead effectively if you can't be vulnerable. Because I coach so many people around the world, around the country, I should say, that I work with the president or the CEO of the companies, or their managers, and they tell me, the people I coach or the employees, when I'm not coaching the management teams, they'll tell me, I can't really get close to this person. They don't share anything. Everything's always good, or always trying to hold themselves together. I can't connect with this person. And I hear that regardless of gender, regardless of age. I hear that from so many employees who want to be led, but they can't be led because their quote unquote boss, manager, or executive will not really share much, and they won't show that vulnerability. Not going to work and crying, but I mean just being vulnerable, that you make mistakes, that you have fears, you have temptations, you have insecurities. That makes a person realize, hey, you're just like me. I can become like you and even better. But so many people they feel like the person's untouchable because they don't show any side of their human nature. So I don't want to follow that person because I'm not that person. Because deep down, nobody is. We're all just a bundle of fucking raw nerves all the time. I mean,
and we all come with our baggage, right? And I do think, those. And as this for a while myself, is those that come from the most traumatic backgrounds have really built the most sophisticated defense mechanisms, right? And those are the ones that have built their entire life around not being vulnerable. They don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to feel the suffering. And there's a lot of shame often attached to it. And the last thing a successful person wants anybody to see is their own shame, right? And so being vulnerable, it takes the screen off. It takes the mask of the persona is withdrawn. It's, you're looking through the eyes of that person into their soul. So it's a leap of faith. But I think it's a leap of faith that is rewarding every single time, right? It might feel like you're holding onto the edge of that cliff, but if you just let go, you will see that being vulnerable and authentic is going to deepen most of your life's relationships. Any that it damages are not, these people weren't meant for you to begin with. So it's less of a loss and more of an alignment.
Right. I have a really funny story, Athena. I have a really good friend of mine. In fact, I would probably put him in my top 3 or 4 best friends in the world. I love him like a brother, and he's probably the sweetest man I've ever met in my life. And he I've known him for 30 years. Whenever he takes, he has testosterone cream he puts on his chest on occasion. I'm like, well, when do you know when to take it? He says, whenever I cry during a movie, I know it's time to take my testosterone cream. And I know he's going to be listening to this podcast, or his wife will be, or his children will be. Yeah. And I know they're going to know exactly who I'm talking about.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
I'm like, okay, you go that route.
Well, crying is perfectly acceptable. And as a woman, I have to say, a man crying is then I know that person is real and authentic. Not to say that those that don't aren't. I am just saying that takes down sort of some of the the wall between us.
Yeah.
Is, all right, I will be as open and transparent as, it's just the way I am now through a lot of hard work.
Well, you don't have a lot of options. I mean, your transparency is so. I mean, your life is all about authenticity. It really is. I mean, you wear that as a badge of honor, and I think that's one of the most amazing things of really why I think I connected so well with you last week on the phone. I'm like, this person may be the most authentic person I've ever met in my life, and I love what you said before we talked about. Before we started recording today, is about living with authenticity. Sorry, my mouth. I'm breathing out of my mouth today and talking. My nose is plugged. It's going to sound like you have a dog. I have a dog in the background just breathing into the microphone.
It's winter in these northern climates. I told you I'm looking out at snow, and so of course got my first cold.
Well, Athena, like I told you, my grandson is a petri dish, man. I mean, you touch that kid, you're going to get every little virus he has. He's got runny nose, cough. He coughs like an old smoker.
And the thing about those damn kids is that they are so resilient that 24 hours they're over it, but you're down for a week.
Right. And even while they're sick, they're still running around. I'm like, I just want a nap.
Right. Oh my God, the energy and metabolism. Bottle that thing and you're a millionaire.
I love it. So let me ask you this question, Athena. Over the past couple of years, what has been one of your major learnings in life that you can share with us?
Oh my God, honey. It's been a quite transformative few years. I think it'll probably make sense if I take us back to the childhood piece.
Do.
So I had two. I guess there were two. I suppose the psychologists call it sort of risk factors as a kid, right? One is I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household. So the dysfunction was nearly pretty much the whole spectrum. It was divorce, it was alcoholism, it was verbal abuse, it was physical abuse, it was sexual abuse. And it was hard and very often felt like an existential threat. And so I spent much of my early life trying to overcome that, right? So you listed, the colleges I went to and the work that I do. And so, what's became, called the last 5 or 6 years working with one of the greatest therapists I could ever have hoped for, have done a lot of work on that. And it's the other thread that I'll describe here in a few minutes. So the childhood trauma took me years and years and years to build defenses against. Right? So I had a good brain by the grace, did well in school, got scholarship at full ride, which got me sort of out of the system and circumstances that I was in, put me in this sort of elite East Coast environment, and I thought, my God, I had transcended the bullshit, right? I gave 2 middle fingers back towards the state of Minnesota.
Now you're living there again.
No, right. I've transcended that, and I'm not damaged and broken, and I'm worthy and I'm good because look what I've done on some paper, and so proceeded to build a career and do graduate school, and much of that, as I realize now, was certainly it's just survival, right? It's I was leveraging a gift that I had to overcome the shit that I experienced, but it didn't mean the shit had gone away. And I for many years had just pretended that it had gone away. The other thread is that I'm transgender. So I was born in the physical body of a boy, and knew from my very earliest memories. I go back to the age of 3 is when my memory is really pretty clear. And, I knew from that moment, certainly probably sure from the moments before I had language as well, right? But as soon as I had language, I knew that I was a girl. People were treating me like I was not a girl. And I was very confused about why that was. And so talking to my mother about that. Here's the 3-year-old thing. Basically WTF in the 3-year-old language, right? So what's the deal here? Is it when I turn 5? Is there a magic incantation, or what's up?
Do you give me a special vitamin?
Right, what the hell, basically. And it was very, because it was the 70s. Even now, of course, there's such a stigma, but in the 70s, it was just unheard of. And I've learned that was just not a conversation anybody wanted to have. So I felt shamed, and I put it down. I buried it. So now we go back up to the East Coast, right? So I'm at Williams College. So I'm working on these two things, right? I've got the family trauma that I'm, trying to overcome through achievement. And then I've got the transgender piece that I'm trying to figure out. Okay, here I am in liberal East Coast college. Now here's an environment where people might know something and I might have some resources to help figure this out. It was the late 80s. I graduated in 92. It was hard to imagine, but before the internet, before iPhones. It was, the library systems were just getting computer. I mean, it's hard to believe how much we've gone since then, how many more resources are available. If I were to do this now, it'd be so different than then. However, then there was nothing. There was really literally nothing. What few resources there were in the East Coast library system was treated it as a pathology. I had an offer. There was a retired New York analyst that was, so Williams College, for those that don't know, is in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, really beautiful part of the country. And a lot of people from New York and Boston and other places, of course, go to the Berkshires in the summer, and then some retire there. This guy was a New York therapist that had retired in the Berkshires. And I sure think his wife wanted him out of the house, that he was giving therapy hours to Williams students. And so I said, hey, I need therapy hours and I can't pay for it. So he said, great. Let's read. I learned that he was a Freudian, and at that time, of course, I didn't know my Jung, from my Freud, from my Adler. So, I just thought therapy was a commodity product. But again, he had nothing for me. He was trying to dig into family origin, and it's not. It's fundamentally who I am in every cell, every fiber of my being. Right. It's not that. And so, at that point, graduating from college, I did this visualization of taking, my gender identity, my orientation around female, and putting that under 6 feet of concrete. I see it in my head with rebar, and that the pledge that I'm going to die with this. Right? So no one needs to know. Oh, I'm gonna cry. No one needs to know. And I will just go along and live a life the best I can in the role that was assigned to me. So I did that. And got married, and two beautiful daughters, now both adults, 18 and 21. So obviously no regrets, right? The two most exquisite, lovely young ladies, and I'm so proud of them. What happened as I got older? So when I turned 40, it's sort of around that. So this is, the sort of the Jungian world. 40 is a pretty important array. Is I began having these, I would call them very big dreams. These are the what Jung would call the big dreams, ones that tap into the collective unconscious. And oh my God, the world is bigger than just me. And then began getting into therapy through that. Read everything Jung ever wrote, and then I got into therapy. At the same time, I was finding it harder and harder. I was consuming more of my mental and emotional energy, I'll put it this way. Just maintaining the baseline, right? Suiting up every day in a gender I didn't recognize, and doing it.
Athena, can you hold on just a minute? There's somebody knocking at the door here.
Sure.
I'm in the middle of recording a podcast right now. I'm sorry. we're back. I could have ignored that, but the dog won't stop barking. Somebody's right in the middle of your story. Bad timing.
Yeah, no worries.
I usually have a do not disturb sign on, but I forgot to put it up.
Yeah. So by the time I was 40, I was my energy, I was no longer able to pull energy from my ego, I guess I would say, right? And it just took more and more of my energy to pretend who I wasn't, and to try to still overcome the pull, the gravitational pull of significant childhood trauma that I was bypassing through, being very busy, being focused on external environment, having a busy job, raising kids, doing martial arts, all those things that kept me so busy that I didn't actually have time to think and feel, right? So that was the way I was trying to deal with it, and was I could feel my life force ebbing, right? I could just feel it leaving my body. And so I found this remarkable woman, this therapist, and began engaging with her. At the time, my pledge to the universe, and it was very specific. My pledge to the universe was, I realize I need to do work. My bargain with you, universe, is if I do my work, if I dig as deep into that childhood trauma as I possibly can, and try to recover the broken and split off pieces inside of me, and that wounded child that is still there, suffering in a trauma that I try to transcend over, right, and not deal with the suffering that was still there. If I do that, then will you allow me to die with the knowledge that I'm transgender? Right? Will you just allow me to die with it? Right? I don't want to deal with it. That's not a thing that's going to work in my lifetime. It's something I would just want to die with and not have to deal with. So my bargain to the universe was that. Of course, I didn't hear a reply, right? It was a one-way bargain. And
I don't think the universe liked that request.
He said, "You think so, hon, boy?
Right,
just
right.
you wait. But you go do your work now.
Yeah, we'll meet up again soon.
We'll meet up again soon." And so did the work, dug in very deep, and oh my goodness, when was that? That was 2012, I think, is when I really began that in earnest. And did amazing work with an amazing woman, and got down through the geological layers, right? So the trauma when I was 17 and my stepfather threatened to shoot me. The trauma when I was 10 and he was trying to throw me out the front door. My trauma when it was layers, right, through that down to when I was 5 or 6 being sexually abused by my father, and going through all of those down to the bedrock, right? And so the therapy work was magnificent, and it's an ongoing process. It probably is a lifelong process, I'm assuming. But I feel as though reconnected with the inner child, right? With everything that I'd split from, I feel reintegrated with. And at the bottom of that, geological strata, the bedrock was, and you're transgender, right? And I was like, oh, fuck's sake. And sorry, I don't know if I can say that.
You can say whatever you want on here.
Okay, all right. Well, fuck's sake.
Okay, I'll say it with you. Fuck's sake.
Just 5 years of this work, and here's where I am. No, the work was amazing, and it was really important that I do it. So what happened then in 2017, which, this is a very long way around to your question, telling about the last few years. So in 2017, what happened is it was January, and it was, of course, Minnesota, and there's ice everywhere. And I was walking our dog, and I remember being barely moving. I think the dog was sniffing something. And it sort of incomprehensibly got slammed to the pavement, to the concrete sidewalk, and slammed my head. The head just slammed, and picked up a very bad traumatic brain injury from that. What was so interesting about the way it happened was I can't say I slipped on the ice, but it felt like it. The way I described it to friends, I said I was walking the dog, and then the universe hit me in the head with the sidewalk. It was almost incomprehensible the force with which I hit. It was like I'd been body slammed, and it was, and being somebody that's attentive to, cosmology and quantum physics and the universe, and know that the universe, I've come to learn, to speak through a lot of metaphors, and they hit in the head, is a classic metaphor, right? For wake the fuck up.
Right.
And take some action, or, you're going to get hit in the head. So I thought, oh my God. Okay, so the stakes are escalating. The universe has called me on my shit that I can't make a bargain with them about, truth. And it's pressing the case, right? So what did I do? I ignored it.
Who wouldn't?
Because,
go the easy route on that one.
Do you think, as a husband and as a father and, as an executive of the company, these are all done in a male role. The last thing in the world I wanted to do was to tell people that I'm actually female, right? That was the single last thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to die with that. That was my pledge to myself. I was under 6 feet of concrete. The universe wasn't having it. So it's like 5 weeks after the traumatic brain injury, I'd already had tickets for us to go to Costa Rica. We often get out of Minnesota in February to dose up on some vitamin B. My girls love Costa Rica, so we, even before my fall, we had this trip planned. They were looking forward to it. It was on their spring break, and I thought, well, nothing else. It's a week where I can just, sit in a hammock or lay down and by poolside in the shade and hear them having fun while I, do my concussion protocol and try to recover from this thing. What happened on the plane is a consequence of this traumatic brain injury and was undiagnosed was that I had a condition called hyponatremia, which is sort of your system's inability to regulate blood sodium serum at a normal level, and my blood sodium had plummeted, and I didn't know that. The symptoms of your blood sodium serum plummeting are the same symptoms as concussion, right? So it's confusion, it's the brain fog, it's fatigue. So I thought, all right, well, this is just the TBI, right? I didn't even think about it. It was just the TBI. But it was actually probably that and the symptoms of the hyponatremia. But nevertheless, I was on this airplane going to Costa Rica with my daughters. And that level hit the critical level on the airplane. The whole thing on the way to Costa Rica. And I went into seizure. So I was seizing. And of course, the airplane packed in close and it's very visible, thank God. And so, within seconds, there's the flight attendant calling, intercom asking for medical professionals. I learned all this later. Of course, I was completely gone. And, there was an EMT right behind me. There was a flight nurse of all things, a couple rows ahead. There was a husband-wife surgical team. It was spring break from, time in Minnesota, so professionals were heading south. But anyway, so it turned out there were 5 highly qualified medical personnel on the flight. So, and all they had so the med kit in the plane had blood pressure monitor, had a stethoscope, and had a saline bag, right? Saline is what I needed. That was, and it was in the bag. And because they had no idea what I needed because they couldn't do any tests, and all they had to work with was the saline bag, so they put it in. So I came to, I stopped seizing, and I came to, and I saw these, what I learned later, these 5 medical personnel sort of all around me, and they put the IV bag, they hung it on the luggage thing overhead. And so I was like, what the hell, where am I? Who are you? What's happening? I had no notion of what was happening. I will tell you that while I was seizing, what was happening to me psychologically was a woman had, this is words for it. They got guardian angel, whatever language there might be for it, but had grabbed it took me by the arm, not grabbed, but it took me by the arm, was holding me sort of tight as we were rocketing through space together. And I could see us going through space at just a enormous speed. So that was happening to me as I was seizing, and then I came to, and sort of pulled back from that journey I was taking with that woman, and into this plopped back into this existence. And who are you? Where am I? I have no notion. I really had no idea what was happening. The IV bag drained, and then the flight nurse who had the blood pressure on me, I heard her say 70 over 30, and then I started seizing again. And they called up to the cockpit again a morning later and asked, what do we do? And the nearest airport was the one we were going to, and there's a nice hospital there. He said, well, we'll get this person off the plane as the first. We'll get an ambulance ready to go. But apart from that, here's a med kit. There's another med kit in the cockpit, which I learned later was not necessarily protocol. He just happened to have one, and they had another saline bag. So they put that in, and they got me to the ground. They got me to the ambulance, got me to the hospital. And at the hospital, of course, they did the blood work, and then I was there for 4 days before I could fly home. But I brought back the blood work to my doctor here, and he said, this must be wrong. And I said, what? He said, this blood sodium, at that level, you'd be dead. And I said, yeah, that's right. And so when I realized, the universe was, back to so I got hit in the head. I chose to do nothing about that. And then it said, okay, well, see how you like this. It took me right up to the edge of death. Pulled me back and said, okay, now what are you going to do? And what I did was go home and tell my therapist I was transgender, told my wife, and began that journey.
You hadn't even told your therapist yet.
I hadn't. No, I had told no one. My bargain was trauma, and I had so much trauma to work with. I was very fertile field, right? So I didn't need to add this extra layer in because I was hoping to avoid that layer altogether. So no, I hadn't told her.
So
I had not told her.
Kind of the timeline is right around 2012. You made a kind of a pact or a bargain with the universe saying, I'll work on this childhood trauma. I'll go through the layers. I'll do the work. Just let me die with this secret I have of my transgenderism. And then 5 years later, or whatever it might be, you fall on the floor, and the universe is saying, or the universe grabs the floor or the ground and smacks it in your head and says, okay, wake up. You didn't really listen yet. So they said, well, we're going to do it again on an airplane, but we're going to take care of you. We're going to have some 5 medical professionals on that plane with you.
Yes,
and we're going to have the right amount of saline with you. We're 2 packets of saline. So that was finally like, okay, now I get the message.
Well, it was, and thank you for saying it that way. I finally got the message because I was thinking, why of all places, this airplane, right? Damn inconvenience. But, if I was reflecting, had I been anywhere else, nobody would have noticed this immediately. Right. And there wouldn't have been the immediate help that, sitting right behind me for F's sake. And the one thing they had in the med kit, the only thing they had to work with, so they used it, right? So they didn't waste time with tests or what's going on here. They worked with what they had. Had I been at home, had I been in my car, had I been in the office, it would have been a very different outcome. So I was thinking, my God, the beauty in that. I mean, there's a certain exquisite beauty in the way that circumstance was constructed for my education. And I took note of it because what other choice did I have, right? So, when I was 22, and I put it under 6 feet of concrete and said, I'm going to die with this. What I hadn't bargained on is I was going to die 3 to 4 decades earlier. Right. That's right. That wasn't a bargain that I wanted. It's like, I'm fine dying at 90 with this. I'm not fine dying at 50 with this. Right. So, all right, you push the point. I see the message, and apparently it is my role in this global human family to do this, right? I hate to call it a leap of faith because I was really pushed to extremity. So I felt like I was out of options. I did have to let go of that cliff, but it was not until I exhausted every single other option.
Well, yeah, I work a lot with my clients on the ways we change, and we can change in 3 ways. Force, we can change by force, which is the way most of us change. You have a heart attack, you change your diet, and that's kind of what happened with you. But yet at the same time, it's not a very proactive way to change. But it's the one that you needed at that moment, because you probably, if that never happened, you would not be living authentically. I mean, what a fucking weird story. That's the weirdest. It's so cool that with that little, could have been a, because you think about this, you know, well, first of all, I have a question for you. I want to know where you were going on that journey with that woman while you were out.
Well, here's what I think. Right, so I guess it's sort of an intuitive knowing, right? Is I have spent most of my life interested in cosmology, and as a kid, I had a telescope, and
you know that a lot of people out there are going to think you said cosmetology, right?
Did I meant cosmology.
No, you didn't say cosmology. You said cosmology,
okay.
But I just know.
Yeah. Oh, I see. No, yes, no, I know. I didn't meant to know. And had a subscription to the Sky and Telescope, and what I as a kid, and looking back on it now, is I'm still my interest is still very much in that line, but I'm doing it now from a position of much more awareness of the interconnectedness of all being. But as a kid, I think what I was interested in, my family of origin was so dysfunctional. I was interested in my cosmological, right? I felt like, we all are stardust. I mean, that is, the atoms in your body were once in the center of stars. This is all true. Yeah. But I felt a resonance to that, right? And so and I've always had. And so, as this woman was taking me through space, I mean, the universe is so vast, right? We're one galaxy out of potentially a trillion other galaxies within just the visible universe alone. I mean, the scales are just, they're incomprehensible.
They are.
And so I feel like she was taking me back to my home. I feel like she was taking me home. And that journey got interrupted by the medical intervention.
Well, I'm glad it did.
Yeah, me too.
I think a lot of people are pretty damn glad it did.
That would have been an awful way to die. And so, this, one of those, Marcos Aurelius, Athena, I'm into ancient history. That Marcus Aurelius is probably the one Roman emperor that was, how do I say it, wise. He had a lot of tremendous wisdom.
Yeah.
He said, consider yourself dead, and now go live the rest of your life authentically, right? And I think that was sort of the notion, right? Because I nearly was dead. And I was like, okay, do you prefer to be a dead man or a live woman? Right?
Oh, I love that.
And that was the choice that was offered to me. And of course, I chose life. And I feel like it's the opportunity now, whatever role that I have in this greater community of mankind, to in my second life here, to I don't know. I think when one sort of gets completely naked in front of others and said, "This is who I am," it enables others, whatever those things are, right? Childhood trauma, sexual orientation, whatever those things are. It just enables more people to be vulnerable themselves, right? And I think what the world needs right now, and more than ever, and I think it's rather urgent, is a greater level of consciousness that requires people to go inwards and deal with their own shadows rather than projecting their shadow externally, right? Which is the source of most of the human-caused suffering and all wars and most of the ecological trauma that we're inflicting on the earth is because the world outside is simply a reflection of the collective level of consciousness inside, right? So I think, if I had a learning from this, like back to your question that led to this, is I think that the learning is I feel such a tremendous deepening in my appreciation for the interconnectedness of all being and the importance that all of us with courage do the work that we need to transform whatever suffering there is, whatever trauma, whatever terror, whatever shame, that from an earlier time, often early childhood, that many people don't even recognize in themselves, but you can see it in the way they interact with the world, right? You can see it in the projections. You can see that. Is that the more people that do their authentic work and reconnect inwards, it's going to lead to a reconnection outwards, right? This realization of, oh, we are all one. Right? We're all a drop in the same ocean, and this belief that we're separate. It's very ego, right? Is that I am this, I define myself as that, I drive a certain car, I live in a certain neighborhood, etc. It has really nothing to do with who you are. Show me your ability to connect to somebody deeply and compassionately, have a heart-to-heart conversation with somebody, sit with somebody while they are in deep grief. That is what I think we need more of, and we need less invulnerable personas. So, if there is, a learning of the last few years, and I do this with, my community, my family, my team is, I'm going to show you who I am, right? It doesn't mean I'm not also a really good professional, but I'm going to approach you as a human. We're also going to drive outstanding business results, and we're going to lead this fucking thing. Right? but I'm also going to do it with you, recognizing that you too have challenges. You too have had hardship. You too have had suffering. You too are a human on this journey with me together. In addition to, you are a fucking badass professional that gets shit done, right? I think we can have both of those things happening at the same time.
I think that's so damn powerful. I mean, when you made the transition and you made the announcement, can I ask you, you don't have to go into detail, this is very personal. What was that like for you to tell your therapist and your children and your family? I mean, what goes through your head? Like,
it was terrifying.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I mean, I had built my entire life around not doing that thing, right? And I'll tell you this really interesting thing about it. So with my daughters, God bless our kids' generation. I know your son and my oldest daughter are the same
yeah,
age.
Same age.
Is I told my older daughter, she might have been 16 at the time, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you do you, right?" It's like, that's fine. You do you. My younger daughter, I took it harder, but we are so close. And I think the greatest gift anybody can do for their kids is to do their own work. Oh, yeah. I know that if my parents had actually gone inward and done their work rather than projecting all this stuff outwards, it would have changed my life. So I know people had some judgment about, well, what do you do with your kids, right? And my response is simply, I am demonstrating what it means to live authentically and vulnerably, take the risks, but lead with love. Right. And if that's a bad role model, you need to recheck yourself. Right? So it was terrifying. I think one of the things that I'm obviously in this professional. So I'm in a financial services industry, which tends to, of many industries, certainly has a reputation of being more traditional, right? More definitely larger preponderance, typically, of men in the organization. We're making huge shifts in that. But historically, it's been fairly male dominated, very very traditional. So it's I know that I am the first transgender person that nearly all of my colleagues have known, right, or met. And that if you had asked them, what describe for me a transgender person, right, prior to me naming myself that, many of them would have probably said, and I haven't polled them, so I don't know, but I'm going to guess that they would have said something like, well, it's probably a confused, 20-year-old, probably living in San Francisco, maybe with a drug addiction problem. Right?
Let's throw it all on them. 20 years old, San Francisco, drug addiction.
But what wasn't in their head, Ivy League educated executive, of a Fortune 250 company. That's not part of their description. And so when I was very, very nervous, I would say I had a lot of fear about what that would mean for me professionally. And I was so pleasantly astonished, I guess I would say, is that by naming myself that, right, I was putting a person to a label, and there was, oh my God, actually, not only do I really like you as a person, but I really respect you as a professional, but you're transgender. And so, when the announcement was made at the firm, I got so many texts and emails from people that I was thinking, oh my God, this person, they'll never talk to me again. Or if they do, it'll, speak. And I got flooded with like, oh my God, you are the single biggest, bravest badass I ever. It's like, there is the respect for being vulnerable completely transcended any previous bias they may have had, right? So, I'll say, further on is, a year into the, transition is, for Pride Month, the firm is in June, and runs some stories on our corporate intranet, right? So about 20,000 people that probably see those stories. And my boss had suggested to corporate communications that they interview me if I was willing to share my story with the community. I thought, this the value in me, sharing the story outweighs any. I think the value outweighs any fear that I have of people going, oh, what the hell she thinks she is, right? Or have judgments and opinions about it. But within 2 days of having this story up, corporate comms told me it was the single most click-through story that they've had. And I received, again, hundreds of emails from people all over the country that I had never met before. It said something like, oh my God, thank you. You have no idea how important that was for me to hear you say that. Here's what I'm dealing with, right? And then they got vulnerable with me, people I never met before. And so, I think you never know who needs to hear the message, but you trust and know that there are people that do need to hear the message. And it doesn't serve anybody to keep it within the fear of judgment or ridicule or whatever it is. I'm over that. Is that if it provides a hope to even one person out there, it's worth sharing.
Well, it is. I think if you pacify the people who are going to judge or ridicule you at the expense of somebody who really needs to hear this and it can be inspired by your message to live authentically, I mean, it's a really shitty trade-off. I mean, it really is. Yeah. Let's appease the people who, I mean, that goes against what the universe wants.
Yeah. And I was, while I was pleasantly surprised at the reception with my corporate family, I did have the reception with my nuclear family that I was expecting, which was, abandonment, basically. And what is so interesting about that, one of the reasons, when you said, when in our pre-show, I love you, and I said I love you too, is it's true, right? Those people that when words come from the heart, they enter the heart. People that look at you through your eyes, they see you, right? They're not confused by the exterior presentation of you, right? In fact, it's meaningless. So, Brian, if I ask you, think of somebody that you really admire and give me 5 or 6 attributes of that person.
My mom, strong, kind, intelligent, healthy, and incredibly giving.
Yeah, right. If you ask anyone that question, they're not going to say, well, I don't like her makeup. I don't like that she's a she and not a he. I don't like that. Yeah. I don't like the skin color. It's none of those things, but those things are very confusing to a lot of people, right? So one of the things that I've become very clear about in the last couple of years is the people that look into your eyes and they see your soul, those are your people. The people that are confused by the exterior presentation and they can't get past your makeup. These are not your people, right? And opinion and judgment are the lowest form of knowledge. It doesn't take any curiosity. It doesn't take any specific knowledge. It is simply working off a bias without any question about the validity of the bias, right? So I get it. In fact, I don't concern myself with it at all, because it's people that have judgment rather than defining me, they're defining themselves.
Exactly. And the thing is, what I have found in the course of my life is that most people who judge are just avoiding judgment of themselves. Let's throw it out there so I don't have to go and do the deep work inside myself. And that goes back to vulnerability, man. It goes back to vulnerability every time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and you can see the person, you can see the level of work they've done by how much they externalize their stuff, right? So if there's judgment, that's an externalization of an internal drama. If they, and if they, and you can see it, and that's work that they need to do to clear up inside, so they can pull those projections and judgments back. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, you and I have been friends on Facebook for, I wonder if we ever ran into each other in the course of, you've been there 25 years.
I bet we must have.
I think we must have. I mean, I was with the company from 91 to 90. I don't know. This is my 27th anniversary coming up in 3 weeks, or 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Of consulting. So I was with the company 5 years before that. And then, have been in and out. I've always had a consulting agreement with somebody with Ameriprise Financial. So I know we must have run across you. And then, but we were just friends on Facebook. I didn't even know who you were. I just knew you worked I saw you with Bill Williams several times on Facebook and on stages and things like that. I'm like, oh yeah. And then when Fred said, you got to talk with Athena, I'm like, oh yeah, I know her. She's on Facebook with me. She's a friend of mine. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to interview her. Then he told me that, she is transgender. She's gone through the transgender, what do you call it, process. I'm probably going to say the wrong word, but
transition. Yeah, she's transitioned.
Transition. Well, I already said earlier in a pre-book podcast, I said, you've got balls. So I've already offended you once. Lady balls. But, and I'm like, oh, better yet, she'll have a cool story. So, I think that's where society is going. I think there's a lot of poor media coverage of transgenderism in certain situations. And I think sometimes the transgender movement has not done itself any favors by some of the movements at the same time. But when you look at somebody like you, and I have a cousin who's gone through the transition as well, and probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And when you look at a person who gives a fuck? I mean, I got maybe 85, 90, hopefully 105 years is my goal to live on this planet. Why do I give a shit? Why would anybody care?
Well,
live your fucking life, man.
Well, that's right. And nobody, 100%. Nobody should care. I mean, again, I ask you, give me some attributes of the person you most admire. And you talked about your lovely mother, and that's right. Somehow, yet people have a tremendous amount of judgment. There's certainly many that do not, and I think it's the minority that do get all the noise. Yeah. I just say it is. The last time I looked, this year alone, I know we're coming up to a presidential election cycle. So, one of our political parties is going to, have transgender be anti-transgender be a platform. Is it this year alone? There were up, year to date through, I don't know, call it October, 583 anti-trans pieces of legislation pushed through state houses in this country. Right? It's 2 a day. People trying to limit my rights, my access to healthcare, my ability to exist, as a co-equal within the society. And it is. What I'm hopeful of is, when people are able to see people people that they might admire and respect say also I'm transgender. You're right. The spokesperson, Jenner, whatever her name is just a terrible spokesperson, and I cringe every time I hear an interview or I see her face. It is not representative, and I can see why that would be off-putting. Is I think the people, the gay rights movement, one of the things that I was sort of found interesting is, and I was, in the late '80s on college campus, gay rights movement was definitely, had a huge head of steam, and that was seen as, there was a whole socialization around this is a new normal, right? We now, the society had gone through the violent opposition to an acceptance of this as a status quo, which is of course wonderful. For whatever reason, there are no coattails after the transgender movement, right? And so I think it's for all of us to do what those pioneers did, which is let's just engage the world with love and grace and compassion. Let people see, that the obviously. So I went from white male privilege, right, to transgender female with 583 pieces of legislation now targeting my rights this year alone. Is nobody does that unless it is fundamental to who they are, and how dare anyone else have judgment about that, right? Without knowledge or without curiosity, without asking me any questions about my life experience.
One of the things I've noticed, and this is when I communicate with people, is as far as people who maybe you would think are more right wing on the subject matter. When I talk about someone who actually has made who is truly transgender, has gone through the transition.
This transition.
Yeah. I haven't really met anybody ever, and I've talked to a lot of people, different levels of education or different political parties or socioeconomic status. I don't really hear anybody ever say that's wrong. Where I hear a lot of is it's the question of somebody waking up one day and say, okay, I'm going to identify as a female, or I'm going to identify as this person, or identify in, and even that they say, I don't care how you identify. Just don't make me call you this or that, or don't force something on me. How do you answer that one? Because that's one that I could be honest. That one is the one that I sometimes question in my head is 18-year-old, 14, 13-year-old kid says, okay, I wakes up and says, I'm a girl, or I'm a boy, or whatever that might be. And call me this from now on. All the teachers call me this. And then, of course, then it gets down to hey, there are kids that, now the extremists will say, well, there are also kids who identify as a cat. We have to put kids in the bathrooms and blah, 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 whatever. That goes so extreme.
They take you down a rabbit hole. And make it about what it's not.
So is there a way from your perspective, and this is a line I didn't expect to go down, but, being, having gone through the transition and being transgender, being a female now, and most people, I think most people support that. They're like, yeah, we get it. People are sometimes born in the wrong body, and that's been a case for years. But then now all of a sudden we have a big, large group of people coming out and saying, I'm a girl, or I'm a boy, or I'm a woman, or a man, and just treat me differently. I mean, is there a difference between the two? I guess what I'm asking.
Gosh, Hannah, it's a very interesting and legitimate question. So I will say, in my lived experiences, I knew fundamentally in every fiber of my being, every day since I actually had words for it, right. Since the age of 3. And so this was just fundamentally who I am, and I effing knew it for the entirety of my life. Now, so I can't say what other people's experiences, right? Sure. If you're 14, obviously now we've got social media, now I think there's certainly much less of a stigma about it, certainly in that generation. And is it exploration, right? So I think part of it is the temperature is just so high around it. I think everyone, teenagers, and that's their whole job, is to sort of explore who you are, right? Figure out.
You don't have a damn clue when you're a teenager. I get that.
And you're getting set to enter adulthood, and you need to figure out who you are, what kind of education you want, what kind of career you want, who you want to be, what kind of friends you want to have, and who you are fundamentally. And I think it's absolutely fine to play around with that. Just as it's fine to play around with, I'm interested in economics this week, next week I'm interested in Russian. And I can hear people's reaction to that as I say it, but I think what is really important is to listen deeply to the person that is saying those things, right? And if it's fundamental to their being, people better damn well respect how they want to be called. And I think, if somebody says these are the pronouns I want to use, I think we should all respect that, because it's their identity, it's their life. If people don't respect that, I think they're defining themselves more than they're defining the person they're trying to disrespect. But I think, I think, I can only again speak to my experience. I do think that, as I've seen a couple of people in my daughter's generations play around with gender expression,
yeah,
is that it's just seeking identity. It's just like, trans girls and not trans girls, and I think we just make it so much more than that. Now it escalates if you take hormones or you get surgery, right? But if you're just trying to figure stuff out, I don't think we need to.
That's an exceptional answer. That was a very exceptional answer. I think that's you know your journey, you know your experience, but you really can't speak on others, and that's a good one. And I think we could all kind of just take that advice. I'm open to. I've marched in gay pride marches multiple times for support of gay rights back in the 90s, maybe. Yeah, probably 90s. And I support the transgender movement 100%. But I have been, I'll be very frank and authentic, I've been very confused by the influx of this and people screaming, today I'm a female, tomorrow I might identify as non-binary. And then that boggles my mind. I'll be honest with you. I don't get it. I'm not going to judge it, because it's not my experience, and I don't really care. It doesn't impact my life. If somebody comes to me and says, "Here's my story," I'm going to say, "You're awesome. Live your life, man. Live the life."
I think is so right. I've heard people say gender is a spectrum. People everyone wants the clarity of this binary. Then you're this or you're that. And people only have their own life experience to go on. I think what you said is right, which is, if it's not within your life experience and you don't have the curiosity to dig further, then you're not entitled to an opinion. Right? If you have an opinion, have curiosity. Talk to somebody. Do some research.
If you have an opinion, have curiosity. Huh. That's pretty good. If you have an opinion, have curiosity, do some damn research. And then if you walk away with that same opinion, at least your opinion for you is valid. You feel like I've done the work. Right. I still agree with what I originally thought, or whatever they thought, but I did the research. And that's the problem today, don't you think, Athena, is that we really don't know half the things that we're propagating for or propagating against. We really don't know. We just jump on a bandwagon. Anti this, pro this, support this, right. Then you say, well, what is this? Well, it's this or that. It doesn't matter what it is. Nobody really, when you really get down, a lot of people who are very vocal really don't know the subject matter they're proposing, or that they're fighting against. They really don't know in depth. Yeah. They just know what they've heard and read and on social media.
Right, and with all the information people take in during the day, just the fire hose of stuff coming at us, right? Is that people go reactively just because it's the quickest thing to biases, unconscious. Some are fully conscious biases, of course, but some are unconscious. But it's a shorthand way for the brain to just dispatch with things, right? So once you put a label on it, you think you know it. So transgender, oh yeah, I know that. Which is again my description of this, probably a homeless person in San Francisco, whatever. But I think when you say that that you put a face to it, right? You say, I am somebody that you've known for 20 years and have a high regard for. I am that. So as you were talking, one of the things that I read recently and I thought, my God, that is genius. I want to be great if we did that in this country. Is in Denmark, they're in their library system, you can quote unquote check out a human, meaning there are people from all walks of life. There are trans people, there are gay, lesbians, there are drug addicts, there are sexual workers, there's all sorts of people that will allow themselves be in the library, and that somebody can quote unquote check out, and you can then sit with that person for a half hour and talk with them as a human, right? You get to know them as a human behind the label, right? Oh, you're gay. Oh, you're not gay. You're actually this really very interesting person with this really exquisite life story, and I want you to be my friend. Right?
Who happens to be gay? Gay's not the label. It's just
gay,
it's not a label.
And so much of this labeling is a way for people to say, well, I know what that is. I don't need to deal with that, right? And they write off an entire class of people that way.
Well, I think a lot of it too is it's a very primal thing for us. We are pack animals. Humans are. We can't survive alone. If you were ostracized from your tribe 10,000 years ago, you were going to die. No matter how great of a warrior or hunter you were going to die. And I think with social media, we are overstimulated with information. Our brains were never designed for this level of influx and speed of information. So we have to jump on a pack. We hear something, we have to jump on a side because I don't want to jump on pro or against, for or against, or because otherwise, if I'm standing alone and I say, wait a minute, I don't know enough yet I need to do some research. Don't have a true opinion on this. You're kind of alone on an island because everybody else is divided in their own packs. And that's a very scary thing for us to be. And I think that's why we are so divisive politically in our country. We have to have a pack. We have to have a sect. To be a part of, or we feel like we're alone on that island. And that's terrifying for people. It takes courage to do that. I asked you, I haven't asked you the question but I think I already got the answer. I mean, if I were to ask you what's the most difficult thing you've ever gone through, I think you kind of answered that. You've kind of gone through a few.
Yeah, yes. Transitioning is by far the hardest.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the childhood trauma, that was, but as an adult, the doing that, it was really scary. To your point, right? I had a family system, I had a friend system, I had my corporate, my colleagues and my coworkers in my corporate family system, and there is it's a certain set of expectations of how that I as this male father, husband, professional executive, we're expected to show up. And my therapist has this great analogy. Those mobiles with like the 6 or 7 or 8 pieces that hang off, and they sort of go in the wind, but it's very carefully balanced and tuned. Her analogy is, when you do something to a piece, like you say snatch it off or you change it, the whole mobile just goes crazy, right? All the other pieces on it just go wild and crazy. And that's the experience, right? Now it's level again. In the new dynamic, it's all level. The mobile is very gracefully floating, all balanced again. But it took a number of years to get there, right? So through my daughters, I think my relationship with both of them is deeper than it's ever been because I'm no longer pretending to be who I wasn't, and I'm more emotionally available to them. At work, I think I was so surprised at the incredible positive feedback I had from so many people that I feel like it deepened many of my relationships and probably made me more effective. And again, it's because I'm able to be more present to it. I'm not spending most of my emotional and mental energy, again, pretending or trying to suit up and get through another day. And I think that, I don't know where I was going with that, huh? What was the question you asked me?
I kind of alluded to the fact that we've kind of already answered the question, what was the most difficult thing you've gone through? And it was your childhood trauma and the transition. I got to do a shout out to Ameriprise Financial though. What an amazing company, the way they've just embraced you and said, okay, let's get back to work. I mean, I'm simplifying for effect. We don't give a shit. Yeah. Great, man. We love you. Get back to work. Let's make this, I just think that's so powerful. And I got to give a shout out to, who I'm going to give a shout out to now, our Bill Williams, man. You've worked with Bill for so many years, and he is one of the most incredible leaders and people I've ever had the chance to meet.
Yeah.
He really is.
I will tell you, as long as you did that shout out, that so obviously it's part of my transition, right? As I had to tell Bill that I was transitioning, and so I asked for time with him, got private time with him, told him the story, and he leaned forward and he said, that is probably the single most courageous thing I've ever heard. You have our 100. I'm 110% behind you. What do you need from us? And
That's
you're
awesome.
right. I know. Usually I cry when I think about it. But that gave the air cover, right? He set the tone for the organization, and that it just unfolded. I mean, it was really an exceptional experience, very surprising, all in very positive ways. How that happened. I was the first person. Actually, my HR director and I printed off how to transition the workplace manual by the Transgender Alliance organization. It's like 200-page HR manual for organizations that didn't have one of their own. And so I read through it and I highlighted the things. I met with an HR director who, think of this, was somebody I'd worked with for years and was a very good friend. And so that conversation wasn't very difficult. But I said, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm doing. Here's the support I need from you. And here are the pages I think that are relevant to the organization, how we can manage this. So once I'll tell you the thing is, once I stopped fighting the current, right, and I just went with the flow, meaning stop trying to say, no, I am not that, I am this, and I'm going to do that. It felt like I was swimming upstream every single day. It was so exhausting. The second I just said, no, I'm not that. I am Athena. And it just, like, everything flowed. And the workflow unfolded exquisitely. And even, I will tell you this, I find it so remarkable, just knowing what was going to be unleashed by a family system, was the after I decided to transition, I just felt such a calm, right? I hadn't done anything. I hadn't taken my first hormone. I'd taken no action. I hadn't, told anybody but my wife and my therapist. I felt such a peace, just on the precipice of all the unknown, right? I had no idea what was going to happen. But I knew I was in alignment, and I chose myself for the first time, right? And the inner peace that I had was...
Well, you figure you drove your car for 40 some years with your emergency brake on. And
yes, it's a great analogy.
You released it. And now
I released it, and everything just flowed. It flowed. Oh my God, this is what it's like to not fight the universe. It was like delightful. Yeah.
Well, yeah. That's amazing. And what you said earlier really resonated with me is the impact. Like, if your parents had done the work that you have done on yourself, life would have been so different for you. And you're making that life different for your daughters and the future generations. And I think I shared this with you when we talked last week. Right before you and I spoke, I had the privilege of being on the phone with Dr. Fred Luskin out of Stanford University, and he's an expert on forgiveness. And he made a really good point when I was talking to him. He said, when you work on yourself, and he was talking a lot about forgiveness, but that's a key point to working on yourself, is forgiving others or yourself in the past. He said, when you do that, you heal 7 generations back and you heal 7 generations forward. And I still can't grasp the 7 generations back part, but maybe it's because we allow that forgiveness that happened over those generations. We forgive that, so we release it from ourselves, and we don't carry it forward to our next 7 generations. But that statement, when he shared that with me on the phone, man, that hit me. I'm like, wow. And in fact, I'm going to tout his book, Forgive for Good, by Dr. Fred Luskin, because I'm just starting to read it again now. This week, I'll start it when I finish the book I'm on. But I went through it, most of it or part of it, and skimmed through the rest of it 6-7 months ago, and it's amazing. But anyway, I have a question for you. So if I were to come to Minnesota today, and I brought my time machine with me, and we jump in that thing, we fly back to, I don't know, maybe when you're right around 20, I don't care, somewhere in the younger version of Athena. You sit down with your younger self and you have an intimate conversation. You give advice, words of wisdom, whatever it might be. What would you share with yourself?
What wouldn't I share?
You have a lot to say.
I think, somebody, I wouldn't trade my daughters for anything. So that's sort of, then you're sort of on a life path that wasn't too dissimilar. I think what I would say to my 20-year-old self is everything's going to be okay. I would say that you are unbelievably courageous, almost miraculously so, and you've got a sense for justice and appreciation for grace. You desire love and compassion, but your life circumstances didn't nurture those things, right? and they're making choices as a result of that. And I think I would say, you are loved, you are held. Do what you need to do to learn in this lifetime, and to heal internally, so that you can, do for your daughters what your parents were just unable or unwilling to do for you. Know that you will do that you will make a mark, and that you will come to healing.
Okay, I want to recap. So everybody out there right now, I know you are going through something. You have gone through something recently, or you're going to go through some challenges in the future. I want you to remember what Athena just said. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to miss a few things, but everything is going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You always get through what you're going through. And that was from a previous podcast guest that I had on a few weeks ago. You are courageous. You're amazingly and immaculately courageous. You really are. And you can get through everything that this universe throws at you, God throws at you, other people throw at you, you throw at yourself. You're immaculately courageous, and you're going to get through it. Have a sense of justice and grace. I mean, grace on others and also grace on yourself while you're going through this. Give yourself some leniency, give yourself some forgiveness, forgive others. And you are loved, and you are held, and you are. Do what you need to heal yourself. Do what you need to practice self-care and self-love. Because I was taught by a friend a year ago this month, actually, when I had a friend of mine who I shared this story. I was going through a difficult time, and she texted me on a Sunday morning, and she said, "What are you going to do this week to practice self-care?" And I started writing things down, and I still do that to this day. I write the things I'm going to do each week to practice self-care. And it's little things. I'm going to work out 5 times. I'm going to take my vitamins every day. I'm going to drink, X amount of water every day. And it's little things. I'm going to read this much. I'm going to whatever. And all that stuff is all what we're talking about here is for many, it's much deeper than that. It's therapy. It's deep digging and gold mining, for lack of a better term, like Athena's grandfather. You got to get in there, man. You got to find the ore. You got to find the gold in there, but you got to go through some shit and some mud and some dirt to get to it. But you have the courage to do it, and you're going to get through it. So, Athena, what's next for you? What's next on your? You haven't done much in the last few years, so what's next?
It's kind of boring. Well, good question. So, my youngest is a senior in high school, so still parenting. So, really enjoying my martial arts journey and deepening with that. I've begun to do some writing. And I think this experience, this conversation with you is helpful to me in thinking through that. I do feel like I've got a lot that I want to save for myself and for my daughters, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'd like to explore further sort of our not only our this connectedness that we all have as humans, but also the greater connectedness to the unbelievable majesty of the cosmos and the source of creation, and do some writing on that. I like to travel. I think though from what I want to do. Fred Schultz said on the last show is people, he's a financial planner. People talk about leaving a legacy, right? That's a cornerstone of the financial planning conversation. That he was talking about living a legacy, right? Is living as fully as you can to the exquisiteness of the full human potential. I think, if I had one goal in my life, it would be obviously my daughters, right? Is that they are launched in the world and are doing things that excite their curiosity and ignite their passions. That's for sure. That's number one. Number two is that I'm able to, at least in this lifetime, fulfill to the extent that I possibly can. My role as part of this human family, in just in terms of being a source for connectedness, seeing other people's vulnerability, authenticity, conferring, grace upon one another. I think those are the things that I think.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything better than what we're doing, and we're going to have you back on because we definitely want to talk to you about quantum physics with you. And I have to read this and the intersection with consciousness. I had to read that back out because I told you, before when we talk, I'm so interested and fascinated by the field, but I have people on here who dabble a little bit in it and they pull back. I'm like, I got to get somebody on who can really have a deep conversation on that subject because that's a really emerging conversation that people have, especially people who are looking every day to become better and more connected with the universe, connected with themselves, connected with other human beings. But really, it can be challenging to read books on the subject as a lay person like myself. And I've read a few, but to have to talk to somebody. So we're going to get you back on. I guess is short. That's a short version of what I was going to say. We're going to get you back on. So, last question, my friend. Is there any question that I did not ask that you wish I had, or any final message you want to leave with the Bamboo Pack audience?
Thank you. I think there are just a couple of messages, and this is from the view from the trenches, right? Having fought, still working through my personal journey. But the first thing I think I would say around healing from trauma is we are obviously not responsible for the trauma we experienced as children. However, it is my belief that as adults, we are 100% responsible for dealing with it, for not projecting our inward trauma, our shame, our fear outwards onto the world, right? And because, as without, so within, as above, so below, what that means is the world outside of us is the collective expression of our individual, of our collective level of consciousness. The more people that are able to pull back their projections or judgments and say, oh, that's interesting. Why do I think that? What do I need? Right. So take an example of somebody cutting you off in traffic, right? Happens all the time. Lots of people get very enraged. And so you ask them what they're thinking. Well, I'm thinking this person's an asshole. What are you needing? Well, I'm needing this person not to be a narcissistic dick and treat me with respect. Oh, interesting. What does that go back to? And they think, if they close their eyes, they did honest introspection, and say, oh, it goes back to when I was 5 and my grandfather, blah, 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 right? Is that the trigger in the environment isn't the thing. The trigger is a pointer to the interior work that you need to do, right? The more people that cannot get violently opposed to the external trigger is merely a pointer to the work that they themselves need to do. So that's one thing. The other, I would say, in living authentically is if you are not free to be who you are not free. And there will come a time when you choose yourself, and don't wait. If there will never be a right time. In fact, the conditions you will have 1,000 reasons why the conditions are impossible. But you need to, at some point, choose authenticity, or your life is going. You're going to be swimming upstream all your life. I guess I will. My last quote, Nelson Mandela. I would love to talk with you about that another time around forgiveness and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that Mandela and Tutu did to try to address all the trauma, the collective trauma from the apartheid era. But I had the privilege of being in Mandela's to Robben Island and off Cape Town and standing in Mandela's cell for 18 years.
Wow, that is insane.
He was an 8x7 cell with a straw mat on a concrete floor. 18 years, 27 years total in prison, but 18 years in that 8x7. 56 square feet was his home for 18 years. And such an example to all of us. I run so many things, but what he said, among many things that are quotable, is may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears. And I think that's what I would leave us with.
Ooh. So let's just compound that for a minute, or compact that for a minute. Let your hopes, say it again, let your fears.
Let your choices reflect your hopes.
Let your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears.
Yeah.
Ooh. My friend, I can't imagine a better way to end this. You are an amazing woman. You are an amazing human. And I am
such an honor.
so blessed that Fred connected us. I'm just getting to know you, and I know we're going to have a friendship. So I'm a big texter. So if I ever get too annoying on text, you can just say, hey, calm it down a little bit, Brian. And I do owe you the book. I'm going to send you the book by Dr. Luskin, Forgive for Good. So I got to get your address and get that out to you. But I want to just end this now real quickly here and just say, I love you. And I do, Athena. I think you're an amazing human being. And I don't say that. I say that to my friends and my family. But other than that, I don't. I sometimes say it to the Bamboo Pack audience, though, because I do. I love them. They're big supporters.
Yeah, you know why? It's because I see you and you see me.
Right on.
We see the humanity in one another.
Well, we drop labels. Drop labels and see the soul.
100%. Yeah.
So anyway, I want to take this time to welcome you. Hey, welcome to the Bamboo Pack audience, Athena. You want to tell that story again? Let's go for another hour and a half and tell that story again. Anyway, I just want to thank you, my friend, for being such an amazing, not just inspiring, which I say that a lot at the end of the pod, but for this one I say inspiring, but also educational. Thank you for being so inspiring and educational today for all of us here, myself included, and all the listeners out there who will be tuning in here in a couple of days. I thank you for that.
Oh, honey, thank you for the opportunity. It's such a pleasure.
All right, let's talk for a couple minutes after we're done. But in the meantime, Bamboo Pack audience, please listen to this episode. Listen to it again. Really let yourself put down your guards if you have guards against transgenderism. Okay. There's my cold coming out. Or if you just want to hear the story of the human spirit, which is it, that's what this is. A person who wants to live authentically. You all want to live authentically. I want to live authentically. This is a perfect example of how you can do that and the courage it takes to do it. But the benefit and the beauty behind the other side of that mountain is way far, far better than any trauma you'll suffer going through that, or you'll experience going through that. In the meantime, please, everybody, please get out there and subscribe, hit that like button, smash the like button, rate, review us, and please share this particular episode with 5 people, not 3, which I usually ask. Share it with 5. This is not about transgenderism just alone. This is about living your life authentically. It's about how do you overcome and deal with childhood trauma or any trauma of any type. How do you come around that and climb those mountains and come out the other side really, truly being true to yourself? This is the perfect example. Everyone out there, in the meantime, I'll talk to you in a few days. Remember to strive, love, and live. I appreciate each and every single one of you.